Welcome back to another episode of Life Between Coasts. I'm your host, Leah. We're glad you're here. Today, we are having one of our first interviews. This is Shep that will be joining us, and we will be talking about how God and the Bible and synchronicity come together. It's a very interesting conversation. I'm very excited for you to listen to it, and I hope that you get as much out of it as I did. And I do believe that he will be a guest that we bring back. If you take anything away from this episode and you want to reach out and have a question for him, please, just like any other time, go to our website, lifebetweencoasts.com. You go to the contact page or the contact us form at the bottom to be on the show, but you can also submit a question there if you have one for Shep, and we'll make sure that he answers it. And like I said, that could be a later episode that he comes on the show with us. So again, I look forward to having you hear this, and enjoy. Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of Life Between Coasts. I'm your host, Leah. We're glad you're here. Today, I'm introducing Shep, who is our pot-smoking, cussing pastor. So take it away, Shep. Tell us about yourself.
All right. First, you brought me here, you invited me here to talk about synchronicity and the Bible. And we'll get to that, but first of all, yesterday you had a birthday, so I hope you had a happy birthday. And I want to say that so your audience knows that you turned 22 yesterday. And then let's get the elephant out of the room. Why do people call me a weed-smoking, cussing preacher? And Shep is my nickname, so we'll get that out of the way. But a weed-smoking, I have 3 bulging discs in my back and 3 in my neck. Probably should have been operated on long ago, but I didn't. And it's sometimes painful. But I can't take the drugs that normal people take. Vicodin, Oxycontin, whatever y'all take, or not y'all, but whoever.
Right.
I can't take it. It makes me sick. So every once in a while, I go out in my garage and I'll fire one up, and that takes away some of the pain. It ain't like I go, hey, let's talk about Jesus. No, it's not like that at all. I don't do it every day. I do it when I need it. And hey, God grew it. I just light it up.
I believe in the medicinal properties of marijuana.
So that's why some people call me the weed smoker, the cussing. I've worked for 50 years. I just retired over a year ago. I worked almost 15 years in we melted super alloys for the aerospace industry. And then I went to the automotive industry for 28 years, in which case I was in management most of the time. Mm-hmm. And in management, you know, not everything always goes your way. So sometimes I'd F-bomb something, or sometimes I would cuss. Never use God's name in vain, or I shouldn't say never. I might have years ago, but sometimes I would. I'm not perfect. I know the Bible a little bit, but I'm not a perfect man, and I do realize that. And that's why Jesus died for us, and this is what I believe, okay? So anyway, I'd cuss, and then people would say, well, you know the Bible, so I got a question. So I'd answer the Bible, or what I thought the Bible said. I would answer to them, here's what I think it's meaning. And then a minute later, I'd F-bomb, and they'd say, there's that cussing preacher. So that's how all that came about. Okay, so now you invited me here to talk about synchronicity, and I'd love to do that, except I take that a step further. I don't think it's synchronicity. I think it's divine synchronicity. And I think that because of what I believe. Now, I'm about to say stuff to you and your audience that you may not believe. You may say, that guy's full of beans. But that's okay. That's okay if that's what you think. I don't have an issue with that, because I've been learning this book, and I want to pull it out. This book right here. For over 60 years, my whole life, I've been learning this book. Now, watch this. I went to church 9 months before I was even born. My mother was pregnant with me, and she went 4 days a week, and I went with her till I was born, and then I went until I was a teenager. Okay, so and if I'm accurate about this, and I end up in heaven, because that was the most godly woman I ever met, and if I end up in heaven and see her again, I want to say thank you for teaching me and showing me the greatest gift was ever given to mankind. But anyway, she taught me and started teaching me this Bible. And so till I was a teenager, was learning and did what, and then I kind of ran with the world, okay? And then I said, well, I'm not living right. So I'm going to get back to learning and reading, okay? So I'd read a little bit, then I'd run with the world. And then I'd study a little bit, and then I'd run with the world. So I can run with the world. I can run with the best of them. And what I mean by that is I lived that life. I know that life. I had the tattoos and the T-shirts to prove it. But the whole thing is, one day I said, I went and got a tutor and said, this book says a lot of things. It says that a man was swallowed by a fish, and he lived there 3 days. It says that 3 boys were thrown into a fiery furnace, and not even a hair in their head was singed. And it says a man took a bunch of animals into a boat, and the whole world died except those in the boat and the animals. And I said, some of this stuff I have a problem with. I don't know. I need proof. And a lot of people think, there's no proof to this, right? And he said, that's awesome. I said, that's awesome. I thought he would say, well, are you nuts? But he did not. He said, that's awesome that you would question this and then want to find out if it's accurate. And that's what you should do. But he said to me this. He said, if you're going to learn this and you're going to find out if it's accurate, don't you want the original? You don't want, in other words, you don't want to study one of these and it be the wrong one. So how are you going to study this if you have the wrong one? So I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, you got to go back, because men wrote this book. And a lot of people say, men wrote it, I don't want nothing to do with it. But what he showed me was that, yes, inspired men wrote the original. So let's go back to the original. We had to go back to the Greek and the Hebrew and even the Aramaic to find out if the Bible that we have is the same interpreted into English as the one we're studying from. I met a man at Home Depot one time, and he said, I've been studying the Bible for 35 years. And then he told me which Bible, and I knew it was inaccurate I thought it was inaccurate, I should say, because here's the deal. If your studies lead you to believe something different than me, I'm good with that. I will say this, however. You better hope you're accurate. You better hope that you're studying the right one and you're going down the right road. You better hope that you know what you're talking about. So through my learnings, and never was I always, okay, gung-ho, let's go with the church. I never was like that. I was always questioning, and a lot of bad things happened in my life. I lost my best friend. I lost my father at a young age and stuff like that. So I was always questioning, why this? Why are you allowing this to happen and stuff like that? Anyway, so once I got this tutor, he says, let's get the right one. So we got the right one, and then he said, now there's a group in this book called the Bereans. And the Bereans searched the scriptures daily to find out if what they were being taught was accurate. You need to be a Berean. Search this and let this book interpret this book. You don't listen to a man. This book says, let God be true and all men liars. If that's a fact, that we are all liars and we all have lied, so we know that we are, then I can't trust a man. He said, I don't even want you trusting me. I want you letting this book interpret this book. And so one day I'm going to tell you, so this went on for years, right? Now, I'll tell you what I found out. That in my Bible, there's 66 books. In this one book, there's 66. 27 New Testament books and 39 Old Testament books. There's 1,189 chapters, 33,173 verses, 774,746 words, and they are all the inspired, inerrant, infallible, and unalterable true word of the true and living God, which is able to save your never dying soul. And I believe every one of them. I believe this book from cover to cover. I even believe the cover that it's a holy Bible. Bible. Believers' instructions before leaving earth.
I like that.
Okay? So that's how I came to believe what I believe. Now, I may say something today during our talk that your audience disagrees with. May say something that you disagree with. All I will say is your studies have led you to believe what you believe. My studies have led me to believe what I believe, and you're not going to change me.
No.
And I don't want to debate it. I see preachers on TV debating this, and it's not debatable. In my opinion, it's not debatable. There's nothing to debate. Your study leads you to believe that. So go ahead. Right. God made you a free moral agent. That means you have free will. So you have the free will to believe what you want to believe.
Thought.
Yeah, so I'm good with, like I said, you better hope you're right. I'm hoping I'm right. And I'm saying the same thing about myself. I'm hoping I'm right. And through my studies, I want to think, hey, I got it and I'm down pat. But we all don't know if we're right. We just pray and hope that we are. So that's where I'm at. So a little about me is I know a little bit about this book. As I married the love of my life, I married my best friend. We've been married 45 years. And if it wasn't for her, her and God sending her to me, I'd probably be a heathen. So that's Shep. Okay. So
we're pleased to have you here, Shep.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here because you talk about synchronicity, and I'll give you just a small one. I was thinking, when it comes to synchronicity, this book says, let's see, how does that go? I got to think for a minute here. It says, all things work together for good to them that love God. So in other words, to me, that's saying if there's divine synchronicity, God's going to work it out for the good. Yes. So I was thinking about when I'm sitting here, I need to tell you that yes, there's synchronicity, but there's also divine synchronicity. And so I need to tell you God, and then guess what? I have a little app on my phone. And it's a Bible, and I press that every day, and it just gives me a verse, and I think to myself, God, what are you saying to me? You know, are you saying something through this verse? Or if I'm reading something every day, I read scripture a little bit every single day. Is there something that you're saying to me? And I think it's a lost art of people listening to the Spirit of God. I think it's a lost art. I don't think a lot of people do it anymore. Like, for example, if I press that Bible and it says something, I think to myself, God, are you saying something to me? Well, guess what it said? It said, all things work together for good. This was the other day. This happened. I was thinking, I need to tell you, and then it says, all things work together for good to them that love God. And I thought, I need to tell Leah that. Couple hours later, Leah called. And said, Bernie, it said, will you come and let us talk to you about the Bible and synchronicity? And I said, sure. But you see that divine synchronicity? How I was thinking it, I read it, you called, and what episode is this?
This is number
7. And what's God's number? 7.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh. I did not know that.
Yes, it is. And I thought to myself, she called after thinking that and after seeing that and wants me on episode number 7, God's number. I'd be honored. So here I am. Okay.
Oh, we're so happy you're here. I'm so excited. Because obviously, just to link us a little bit here is you are one of my clients in my other profession, not interviewer, but as a tax person, so or tax specialist, I should say. But that's how we've become acquainted, but through a line of people. So, I had befriended a bartender years ago and was friends with him, who ultimately left where he was employed. Went on, he was married, has children, so they've been coming to me for years, and they referred your niece, and she came in one year, and then not even a couple weeks later, you were at the doorstep complaining that you had to fill out one of my forms. Right. But I told you it was okay because it's how I got to know you. Right. And from that point on, we've been able to have lively conversations. And when we spoke this year, I said, you definitely had to be here. It took me a year to get to this point, but you had to be one of the first guests because I needed to have that influence of the Bible. And that's something that I've never really read, verses here and there, but not anything, and I go on autopilot. Like I said, I go to church, usually weddings and funerals. And I know all the prayers and I know what I'm supposed to do. But, I don't stand up and take communion or anything because I never went through all that process. So again, it's good to have somebody like you that has taken himself through the trenches and pulled himself forward and, lives, a bright and exciting life. And again, thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. You see, in this life, excuse me, what I've learned, and it's really kind of sad to me that I've met a lot of being in management for many, many years, over 40 years in management. I've met a lot of intelligent people, a whole lot more intelligent than I'll ever be. And what has bothered me over the years is the intelligence of people, how smart they are in this life, but never done any study to after this life. Did you look into, I wanted to ask, and really haven't, but I wanted to ask people, did you look into eternity? Well, that's what happened to me. I said, one day we're gonna, this book, you know what this book says about life? It's but a vapor. It quickly fadeth away. And if you look past on your life, it went by in a nanosecond, and the rest of it will too. So then eternity, is that it? And I thought to myself, is that it? You die and you go in the ground, and 1 billion years from now, there was never no BJ, there was never no Shep, there was never nothing. So I got to look into that. And that, if I could get anything today from you or your viewers, will you do your own study? Will you find out if let this book, start reading this book and get the right one, or go to church or something and find out if what this says is accurate? Because there's a lot of people have this life down pat. They got it down pat. They got it to an art on how to make money, how to pay their bills, and how to buy the things that they want. But they have no clue about, and I'm not cutting on them, because hopefully the word gets out where they say, I've got to do my own study. And I want to know if there's if there's nothing, you'll find that out. But what if there's something? Will you go do your own study, and will you find out if eternity's real?
And I think that you'll find that more people do those studies when they have some sort of life-changing event. They're diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, or
that's
or
really true.
Or something traumatic happens to them and they search for answers. When you say, you talk about the eternity side of it, I think that one of the biggest things that we don't pay attention to is that we have an expiration date, and we don't know when that expiration date is going to happen.
Right.
And so we have to live each day to its fullest, but we also have to know that there is an end date, and we have to face that mortality.
That's right.
And I think so many people are scared of what death or dying means. And I've seen it from, obviously, the perspective of my family, but I've also been present for 4 different people, an uncle, an aunt, and both of my parents, as they took their last breath, and the process that they go through. And so it's a very interesting observation of life,
right,
to see that final end. And so if people were able to start to think about, wow, I'm not going to be here forever, I think that they could turn to a book like that or some other spiritual material just to open their horizon.
Yep. And see, I've also learned that in any religion, you can name it. Now, I'm not going to point them out in front of your audience. I have them in my brain. If you were to ask me, what about this religion, I'd probably answer you. But in every religion out there, I can find error. So, but these are man-made religion. God, that had nothing to do with religion, okay? We're not going to all be in heaven and say, okay, all Catholics here, all Baptists here, all Methodists over there. None of that's going to be there, okay,
Right.
according to this. Now, I'm telling you what I believe, okay? According to this, that's not going to be there. So, what you've got to do is your own study. You got to do your own research. And like I said, you can't trust men. Now, I can tell you a couple churches in the area that I know the guys. I know there's a church in Plymouth called Northridge Church.
Right.
And I know the pastor, Powell's his name. He teaches this book right. There's one in Westland. It's called Community Free Will Baptist Church over on Cherry Hill near Benoit Road. What's his name? I know his name. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right. Anyway, Community Free Will Baptist Church. I know him too, and there's one in Taylor. But these guys teach this book. So if you're wanting to say, hey, maybe there is something to this, go to these churches and check it out, and then do your own study. That, if I could get that across to your audience or to you or to whomever, that would be wonderful to me.
And for the single men out there, I hear Northridge has some, some cute single girls. Then they have a coffee bar and a rock band and everything else. So.
Jimmy Lawson is the guy. The preacher. He's a good friend of mine. I can't believe I forgot his name.
Don't let him hear this episode.
Right. And then Johnny Cox, the one in Taylor, is called Fellowship Free Will Baptist Church. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to be a Baptist or any of that. Matter of fact, Northridge is non-denominational.
Right, it is.
I'm not telling you to be any religion. What I'm telling you is go where you can learn this book and learn the accurate one. Okay, that's what you want. It doesn't do you any good if you study a Bible and it's the wrong one. And trust me, there's so many people on that internet that are inaccurate, according to my studies. I'm sorry, I got a scratchy voice, but there's so many people on that internet that have it all wrong. I mean, all wrong. So you can hear all kind of junk, and it astounds me. I look at some of these so-called preachers, and they don't have a clue of what this book says. And I'm thinking, you're teaching people this, and there are people that'll say, oh, I believe that, but it's inaccurate. So you want to make sure you get the right one if you're going to go that route. And that's what I'm trying to convey to people. And watch this. A guy said, Bernie, oh my gosh, here I go again. A guy said to me, he says to me, this is all this is nothing but wives' tales. All this is inaccurate. And I said, okay, let's look at it your way. Let's say it is. Let's say it's all inaccurate. It's all fable. But I live my life trying to follow the commandments. And by the way, there's 613, not 10. But anyway, a lot of people say, let's follow the 10 commandments. So we'll go with the 10 because I can't even follow the 10. At least in my life, I haven't. But anyway, so let's just go with the 10. But let's say I live my life trying to follow that. And I live my life not stealing and not killing and not hurting people and loving people like I should and just living right. And I die. What have I lost? I've lost nothing. I was they're going to say, he was a good fella. But on the other hand, you say it's wives' tale. What if you're wrong? If I'm wrong, I lose nothing. If you're wrong, what have you lost?
Right.
Okay, so that's my attitude on the Bible. If people say it's inaccurate, I told you there's 774,746 words. They are not one contradiction. Not one. I've had people come to me and say, found a contradiction, Shep. Anyway, I found a contradiction. What is it? Well, one of the commandments, thou shalt not kill. I said, that's correct. Then over here, it says there's a time to kill. There's a time to sleep. There's a time to eat. There's your contradiction. I said, you go back to the Greek and the Hebrew on thou shalt not kill. It doesn't say that at all. It says thou shalt not murder. So there is a difference. There's a time to kill, defending your family, defending your country. But there's never a time to murder. Mm-hmm. So, no, there's not contradictions. Not one. And if your viewers write in, now I won't answer emails, but if your viewers write in and say, hey, I have some questions for this fella, I would be glad to answer them. Mm-hmm. You'll have to invite me back, and then I would be glad to answer any questions, but I'm not going to answer them by email, but that's just me, okay? I'm not good at all that junk.
You're fine.
So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Good. Now, what was your moment that shifted you to that book? You said you would read or you'd study and then you'd go play, and then you'd read and you'd study good. And then you go play. Mm-hmm. What was the thing that stopped you from playing? Oh, you could still play, but what the part of making sure you were on the good side of playing? Okay,
a lot of, like you, unfortunately, a lot of bad things happen. Mm-hmm. I lost my father at a young age. I wasn't even a man. I was 21 years old. A lot of hard things. I lost my mentor and my tutor at a young age. And just a lot of things happened that I would say, why? And I think a lot of people question God on why is all this happening. Well, you know what this book says, and I'll get to your answer here in a second, but this book says, wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. So you see who brought sin, you see who brought death, you see who brought sadness and sickness in the world. It wasn't God. God created Adam and Eve perfect. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we question God on why this, God's sitting up there going, I didn't bring this to you. Man, not necessarily your sin, but man's sin, period. Mm-hmm. Women's sin, period. Brought death, sickness, sadness into this world. Mm-hmm. So instead of blaming God, and I was like everybody, hey, man, what's going on here? Why are you allowing this? And so all this bad happened, and so I got to thinking one day, I don't know about a God that would allow this bad. I haven't had, and I hate to bring this up, but I think I should. A grandson of mine took his own life, and a lot of bad. But I changed before that situation. But what happened to me was, I'll show you what happened to me. This picture here. See this picture? Uh-huh. Can the camera see the picture?
This picture.
Okay. Mm-hmm. This is a picture of where my father, now remember, my father was my best friend and he died at the age of 51.
Okay.
Okay. And it stung. You've been through it. Mm-hmm. And this hangs on the wall of my home every day. When he was a boy, he lived in this house. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I got a tattoo of that shack.
Okay.
Okay. And it says from here, because basically from my father, yes, from here through eternity, and that's 3 nails. Jesus was nailed to a cross. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, what really, now don't get me wrong, I was heading in the right direction, just wasn't all the way there. Okay.
Right.
And my son said, Dad, I need you to read this book. And I said, yeah, what's a book? And he said, it's called The Shack. And I don't know, maybe you've seen the movie. The movie's out. I
actually read the book.
I think the book was better than the movie, although I enjoyed.
Any book is better than any movie.
Right.
Hollywood takes too much.
But I would get up in the morning before going to work, fix me a coffee, and sit there, and I'd meditate on the things of God, or I would pray, or I would read a little bit or study a little bit every morning. And that book, I bet you sat there a couple months, right there by where I set my coffee. Mm-hmm. So I picked that book up, spoiler alert. And in this book, if you've seen it, you know this. If you haven't, I apologize, and I'm going to spoil it for you. But in this book, a man's child gets killed. Mm-hmm. I think she was 3, but they find her dress that she was wearing in a bloody mess in a shack in the woods. Oh, rickety shack. Okay. And so this guy questions God. And why? Why would you allow my child? This was a 3-year-old. Why would you allow that? You know? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, why do you allow this bad? And anyway, in this book, he's summoned to the shack. Now, it's in a dream, but this is how I believe God really is. Mm-hmm. He goes to this shack, and God showed up as a mama. Now, God, I don't believe God's a woman, but he gives, this book says, I'll supply your every need. And that day, that man needed a mama. God showed up as a mama. Then the man needed a friend. God showed up as a friend. Then the man needed spiritual guidance. God showed up as a spirit. Then the man needed a father. God showed up as a father. And so, anyway, to make a long story short on the shack, the dude finds out that it wasn't God's fault that any of this happened. Mm-hmm. And so I finished the book. And remember, this is hanging on my wall. And I always say, like even in the morning when I hit my little Bible and get, God, what are you saying to me? I even say this. I carry it a little further. I say, Jesus, if you were sitting next to me, which he is, what would you say? Now, he doesn't verbally tell me. If he did, I'd already be dead of a heart attack. But he impresses your mind, okay? And I'll give you an example of that. But anyway, I said, God, when I set the shack down, the book, I said, are you talking to me? And I still got these feelings going through my head of why do you do this or allow this anyway? I ain't saying you cause it, but you certainly allow it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I said, what are you saying to me? And I stood up to get ready to go to work, and I turned around, and this was staring me right in the face.
Wow.
Okay, you want to talk about divine synchronicity? That's divine synchronicity. He said, there's the shack right there. Mm-hmm. And just like the guy in the book found out, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of nudged me to a little closer than what I was, okay? So anyway, the tattoo of the shack, mm-hmm. which can be my father, or it can be the book. This has double meanings. Yes. To me, this is divine synchronicity. Mm-hmm. God was talking to me that day, mm-hmm. and he was saying it's not my fault, and he was saying to me, quit blaming me, it ain't me. Mm-hmm. And once I got that and I learned that, and then it just changed my outlook on.
What were you blaming yourself for?
I wasn't blaming me, I was blaming him.
Oh, what were you blaming him for? Like,
why would you allow my grandson to do that? Or why would you allow my dad to die? I needed it at the most time I needed him. I was 21 years old. No one taught me how to be a man. And I hate to say this, but I haven't always treated my wife like she deserves. Mm-hmm. But no one ever taught me how to become a husband or be a husband. I had to learn it, and I had to learn how to be a dad, and I had to learn how to be a man. I didn't have that, so I blamed him. Well, why'd you take my dad? Why'd you take my mentor? Why'd you take my grandson? Why everything? Why? And then eventually, it's not his fault at all. And that's, once I learned that, and got that in this little pea brain of mine, then I was on a better road and I could be a happier person.
Right. I think there was some recognition of, for me, through all of that, was that, I stopped blaming, the same thing, but just understanding things happen for a reason. Simple as that.
Right.
And whether it's divine or whether it's the universe, it's what you believe, right. And I believe there is a higher power. I believe in God. I also believe that there is room for the universe to step in too, because there are parts of religion or formalized religion that don't believe in all the parts of what synchronicity can bring to the table. So my biggest one is reincarnation. I believe that there is the potential for reincarnation in various things. I do believe, and again with synchronicity, also, of course, the fate and the destiny and all of that comes into it. So I going back and forth between the Holy Bible and the universe, is a very interesting blend.
It is.
So like I said, I stand up, I do believe in one side, but I also believe in the other. And how can, the two sides coexist, really? Because when people talk about the other side of it, outside of the church, so let's say we talk about the mediums and the psychics and other types of spiritual healers. Not everybody believes in that, especially from a religious perspective. Those people are dealing with the work of the devil, in some cases, right? So
according to that book.
According to that book. But I think that there's room, because obviously I had to settle some things with my father.
Right.
And he knew I was coming for him. But, but that makes me a better for me, it makes me better to move forward.
It's what you believe.
And so I think that we need to blend, but I've felt not necessarily, what's the word? Not, is it extricated or whatever, where you don't really feel part of a religion necessarily. Sometimes you see things or you read things from religious leaders that aren't, inclusive of everybody that's out there, because they have an underlying political view or perspective of something that they're trying to use the pulpit to deliver that same message. And it doesn't matter, again, politically, I don't care. I don't talk about that stuff to,
Right.
because that part, we have these cycles that we go through.
Right.
Everybody's going to be mad at everybody. But
That's right.
again, I go back to just being human.
Yeah.
We're humans.
Yeah.
Who cares about politics? Let's talk about being humans
Right.
and blending this together.
Right.
So how do you think, is there the possibility of people being open to, like, from the religious perspective, to being open to the synchronicity or the universe side of things?
Well, I would have to say, if it goes against this book, then I would say no. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's not the universe; it's God or the devil. Mm-hmm. But that's again what my studies have led me to, and I told you I believe this from cover to cover. So it says about your mediums and psychics and all that, stay away from it. This says it.
Right.
So I would stay away from it, but if that's what you believe, that's your business. It's just like politics. I don't care what you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I believe what I believe. You're not going to change it. So to me, to answer your question, God said it. I believe it. That settles it. That doesn't make me right.
Right.
Okay. So
I agree with that.
So here's what I do. And I would encourage you to do the same. Do a study and find out if that stuff that you think is right is accurate. You can learn it. I'm telling you. This book says that it can cut through the bone and marrow. This knows your thoughts, and if you study it and read it every day, it'll talk to you, and God will say stuff to you. Like I always go like this. Okay, like I told you, are you talking to me? And if so, he'll repeat it. And I'll give you a small example. Say you're driving down the street and you see a guy holding a sign. We see it all the time. I'll work for food, or give me some money, or whatever it says. He's sitting on a bucket at a red light. See him all the time, right? That little voice in your head that says I should give him $5 for lunch, that's him. All good things, this book says all good things come from God. Well, that's a good thing, I would think. So that came from God. The voice in your head that says, no, get a job, you bum, that's you. Okay, but God.
It's the pressures from society
Right,
and things that enter in.
That's how God is. God, and so if I think God's telling me something, I'm a little slow, and I imagine he's sitting up there and going, oh my gosh, he's slow, because he's got to tell me 3 or 4 times. But when he does,
that's good.
I will know, and through my reading or through my little Bible in the morning, he'll show me. And then I'll know what he's saying to me, and he will do the same to you. Okay, so to encourage you to do that. This is called the Life Application Bible. Now, the good thing about a Life Application Bible is through here, it is at the top, it says the original Bible, but then it kind of explains it at the bottom. Okay? Well, I got this as a gift to you, so maybe you can start your own study and find out if what. So here's what it says. It says to you from Shep, on the occasion of divine synchronicity, and I put yesterday's date because that was your birthday, and I want to give this to you as a gift from me. And maybe, just maybe, and so your viewers can see that Bible too if they want to start their own study. That's all I'm encouraging. I ain't asking you to believe me. Matter of fact, I don't care if you don't believe me. I want you to do your own study and find out if what you're being told on that YouTube or what you're being told by your friends or what your mama even told you was accurate. And I want to give you one last thing, and this might sting a little bit, but I'm going to give you one last thing. I didn't know your mother and father. Didn't know them. So I can't tell you where they are or where I even believe they are. But I can tell you where I believe your brother is. You know why? That book says unless you've reached the age of accountability, you can't go to hell. I don't believe he was 7 when he, heaven forbid, but he was 7. And so I know where he is. Okay, I know, and there's no time there. So no time has went, but he misses his sister. And I do know that. And so I would encourage you to follow up. Because if I'm right about any of this, if you want to see him again, got to follow that. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm not even asking you to believe me, okay?
No, I'm extremely open to this. This is something that has been on that untouched bucket list as something to start to read the Bible. I've actually been given translated versions of the Quran. I've been, just looking at all various religions, and unfortunately, of course, with the Quran, I've actually, one of my elder clients, he told me that it's not necessarily the words are too hard. It's the how it translates for the person that delivers certain words on that. So you, of course, you've studied so many different forms, so that might be something else that we can talk about. I have other leaders in some of those same groups that potentially will be coming on the show as well.
Okay.
Just because it is very important to know that there's people out there that will say this is a God thing and not a universe thing. And there's some people out there that will say, no, this is totally the universe. Right. There's no such thing as God, right. or I don't believe in God.
They better hope they're right.
Well, and the running joke, of course, is there's no atheist in a foxhole, right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
But it's an interesting and a very exciting topic, and unfortunately, we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, indeed.
And I think that this is something that will maybe get some feedback from the audience and see where they want this conversation to go.
Okay.
And then we can plan for some additional, focus time on specific areas where they think that maybe that book might be wrong, or where this steps in.
Okay.
Again,
that's fair.
It's been influenced in all of our lives from start to finish. Yeah. And it's very interesting how death happens, and when you see people go through that final process. My dad, I'm pretty certain he made his peace, so I'm hoping he's there. I'm pretty sure he is, because if my mom's with him, then I know that he's with her. And my mom, there was no question.
She told you keep the faith.
She was, she's that Billy Joel song, "Only the Good Die Young." Okay. She died at 51. So that's a connection between us.
There we go.
I was 25, you were 21. My dad's dad died when he was 27. So, again, very young. And I think he was 51 or 52, right in that same group there. And but with my mom, one of the fantastic stories I always like to tell about her is not only did she drive from age 16 to age 51 and never receive a ticket, she was never once in her life even pulled over.
Wow.
Which is an amazing feat.
It sure is.
Especially with people. Well, I have a lead foot, but that's a different story. I like to drive faster. Yeah. But she was like absolutely pure. She was an amazing
She really
person.
sounds like it.
Mm-hmm. I wish that so many more people could have met her.
Right.
So, again, thank you for being here, Shep. I'm so happy that you joined us today. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thanks again for joining us on another episode of Life Between Coasts. We look forward to seeing you next week. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.